Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. So, they say the truth will set you free. And what do we think is meant by that? I think what we often think is meant by that is if you tell the truth, then you won't be carrying around the lie, and the lie is heavy and depressing. And that when you tell the truth, you let go of the lie, so you're free. And you're also liberated from whatever you were not telling the truth about. So yes, I think that's absolutely true. But something cropped up this past weekend on the Freedom of Spirit Foundation workshop. And we were exploring, well, freedom, obviously, freedom of spirit. And one of the things we were exploring is different ways in which truth is freeing. And one of the things that came up was telling the truth about who we are, telling the truth about our situation in life. So if the truth is that, let's say there's somebody where the truth is they've got very little money, they're scraping along, managing, but on very little money and without much fame or prestige or anything like that. Now, if that person accepts that is the reality of their life, and they are honest and truthful about it, not necessarily running around and telling everybody that their personal business, but, they're in alignment, they're at peace with the fact that that's true, that's actually very freeing. But if that person instead is trying to present a persona of, I've got it all sorted out, I'm very well off, I'm very successful, I'm highly respected, I'm well known, all of these things, that's a lie. And they know it's a lie, and they can feel that it's a lie. And actually, it becomes a trap, because what they're doing is they're building like an exterior shell around them with a particular look to it. And it becomes less and less a representation of who they actually are. And that creates an inner fracturing, a conflict, or what the psychologists call a splitting between the felt experience of being alive and the represented life. And that becomes a trap. The person feels trapped. They feel more trapped than they would have done if they just acknowledged to themselves and to others, perhaps, the truth of their situation. Which is interesting, because often when we create these false personas, either in our own head or in our representation to others or both, we're doing it because we think it will free us, because we believe that we feel trapped because of the nature of our circumstance and our situation. Whereas actually, very often, it's not the truth of the circumstance and situation which is the trap. It's the belief that it's the trap, and it's the attempt to escape it by lying about it one way or the other. That's what creates the trap. But the trouble with the trap is it reinforces the idea that the original circumstance and situation is a trap. So it's one of those negative spirals that just gets worse and worse. But then when the truth is told, it's very freeing. And I just mentioned an example where somebody's not got much money and living a very modest life. I've also known people who are living a very modest life who are very, very comfortable with that, and they feel absolutely free because they never ever represent themselves as being any other way. And in fact, often people will think that person is wealthy because they're picking up on the sense of abundance that person has, because that person is in touch with, frankly, being alive is abundant. The fact that we all live as long as we do is an extraordinary thing. There was a time in our history when people did not live nearly as long as we do now. You'd have 12 children in the hope that 5 of them would survive. All of that was considered to be normal. So the fact is that even aside from all the circumstances of our lives, we have this miraculous fact of being alive and perhaps healthy and all of the other great things that are right there in front of us every day. The beautiful sky, the birds, the plants, the sea, all of these things. But we lose our appreciation for those things when we catch ourselves in the trap of pretending to be someone who we're not, or pretending to be different from who we actually are. And this can apply to many, many, many things. So let's say you are working in an office and you're really not happy. That's really not what you should be doing. Then that's a trap. It's not a trap because working in an office is inherently a trap. It's because for you, it's a lie. For you, it's not in alignment. So it's a trap for you. So for you, you need to get out and do something else. Or maybe you're somebody who thinks that you're supposed to be an energy worker. So you're being an energy worker, but it's just too hard, and it's just difficult dealing with all the people, and difficult dealing with the pricing and the setting up the treatment room, and are you running workshops, and are you filling workshops and all that sort of thing. Maybe you're someone who'll be much, much happier if you instead are, let's say, a carer, or let's say you are somebody who writes books, or there could be any number of other things which are more in alignment with you and which for you then feel freeing because that's what's right for you. And that's the truthful expression of who you are. So if we're feeling trapped, is there a possibility that we are actually not being truthful about who we really are, or not being truthful about our circumstances and our situation, at the very least in our own head, and then beyond that with other people, as and when it's appropriate? I'm not talking about walking around with a sandwich board on, saying I have no money, or saying I'm in the wrong job, or saying I hate my relationship, or whatever it may be. I'm talking about being appropriate with it at the same time. So at the weekend, we actually did some ridiculous and fun games around playing around with telling the truth to ourselves and to each other, and playing around with noticing how freeing that was. And actually in that process, something that was shared was the experience of letting go of the thing that we're struggling to pretend is true. And that when we do that, it can feel like a death. It can feel like a mini death. But what it is, it's a death of the fake persona. It's a death of the illusion. And that can feel really difficult to begin with. It can feel really empty. It can feel really sad and tragic to begin with. But in a moment, that can turn and can transform. If we don't run away from it, if we stay with it, that can turn and transform into something magical and miraculous, which is a feeling of peace and feeling of oneness and feeling of being in alignment with ourselves and a feeling of being free. So if you or someone you know is feeling a bit trapped at the moment, is there a possibility that there may be a lack of truthfulness going on in terms of who am I? What's my situation? What's my circumstance? What's my experience of all of that? And if with a bit of truth-telling, could that be possibly, potentially transformed into an experience of freedom? And of course, I'm not talking about resigning ourselves to something that doesn't work. I'm talking about being authentic with ourselves. And from that place, then of course we can say, yes, this is the truth, and I feel much more free. And I am going to change my circumstances. But it's much easier to do that when we've told the truth about what the circumstances are. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a fantastic week. And I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.